What's up, YouTube? Welcome back to Celio's Network. Just a quick big thanks to my guests. I've been having some hectic personal life right now, so this discussion was a little harder than usual to get together, but thank you to the guests for working it out to be here. Why don't you guys introduce yourself, Otto, Russell, and then Nick, and we'll get into this meta discussion for the last expanded regionals of the season, Hartford Regionals.
I guess I'll go first since you named my name first. I'm Otto. I'm going to Hartford. It's probably going to be my second to last regionals. I think I'm probably going to hit up Madison. Not too excited about having to play expanded, especially in the same format again, but we'll see how it goes.
Cool. Nick?
I'm Nick Robinson. I will not be going to Hartford, but I did play in Daytona. Only other regionals I have planned for the season is Madison. But I'm happy to talk about Expanded a little bit.
Sick. And Russ?
I'm Russell. I run someone's PC, the team article website, / family, whatever we are. I'm literally not going to another regionals this year, and I'm so happy for that. And Expanded's pretty good, and I'm happy to talk about it.
Cool. Yeah, I like Expanded myself as well. So, what I want to start with is Daytona Beach Regionals was 2 weeks ago, roughly 2 weeks ago. 367 Masters, so it was definitely on the smaller side. We didn't have points go to top 128. Do we take these results with the same relevancy as we would as, say, an 800-person regionals? Was the regional still concentrated with good players enough for the results to matter? Russ, I'll ask you that first.
I think absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
Regardless of like the size, pretty much the same players that would have made top 32, top 64 at a huge regional. Top 64 this one, in my opinion. I think we saw a lot of the same names.
Yeah.
Maybe like one or two like more rogue ideas are going to do well in a concentrated environment, because the larger number of people that are there, the more crap you're going to see in the early rounds that you take an auto loss to that literally shouldn't see play. So a lot of like rogue ideas will be successful. Nick, I actually think you actually top with Explat, and I think part of that has to do with one, like you're surrounded by other good decks that you're prepared for, and you're not running into dumb stuff that you're like, why do they play this card? And like you might auto lose to it for whatever reason. So I certainly do. I think the results in top 8 speak for themselves, and I think what I saw there is what I expect to see in coming into the next regional, minus one or two decks.
Cool. Okay, does anyone disagree with Russ? Do you think that we shouldn't take the results too heavily? All right, great. So we'll go into the top 8 decks. Caleb Gedimer, a name that we are very familiar with, won with Zoroark Toad Lasers. I wrote an article on Flipside if you want the full breakdown, but DDG went on a bit of a rampage with Zoro Toad earlier in the season, but it was the control variant. This is with Toad and Lasers and Verbank, so they're actually trying to take prizes a bit more aggressively. Otto, do you think Zoroark Toad is a top contender going into this week, even though it's back on the radar?
It's like a tough decision for me to make because since I'm playing, I'm thinking about that myself, like whether or not like they will play it themselves or like other people will pick up the deck. I'm going to say no, but like begrudgingly, just because I think that this version of Zoroark Toad is a little bit more of a one-trick pony than the previous version. So I think it might be a little easier to counter if people choose to do so. I guess that's the real question, if people are like actually worried about it and play like Golisopod in their decks, or they play a Ranger, or they play a way to prevent special conditions from taking effect.
Yep.
But we'll have to see.
Yeah, the old diffusion of responsibility. We'll let someone else counter it, and I'll play my good deck.
Right. I mean, I'm not going to take a loss to it. I know that. So.
Okay. Cool. That's a good thing to add. Nick, what do you think?
I feel like it's definitely still a strong contender, just seeing how it played against the meta decks at Daytona, like having the Fighting Fury belt so that your Toad doesn't get one-shotted by Pikaroms and things like that. I found to be really relevant. and I played against it 3 times. I played against Jimmy twice, and I played against Danny on stream. Well, more I watched Danny play on stream, but it's definitely like a relevant deck, and I think people either need to have a way to beat it. Like they probably want to have some sort of a game plan going into that matchup.
Cool. Russ, how do you feel about it? I know, just real fast, I'll point this out, that you were one of the successful Zoroark Golysopods at the end of the previous Zorotoad Rampage that made top 8, and Zoroark Golysopod was one of the best ways to counter Toad in the past. So what do you think about Zorotoad lasers right now?
I spanked them boys like toddlers at Dallas, bro. Trash. So, like, they're all such phenomenal players. And I said this as soon as Caleb won the event, is that they prey on people not being prepared and making misplays in both the matchup and in their lists. So, Keon and Kenny Britton, who are both on someone's PC, they both played Ranger in their Pikarom list, so they auto-win all the DDG players.
Wow.
Because we personally always expect to at least make top 8 and top 16, and I personally always think to see at least 2 or 3 DDG players throughout the course of a tournament.
Mm-hmm.
There's too many of them, and they're all way too good for them not to put at least like 3 or 4 in a day too. And if there's only like 1 or 2, everyone's talking about it amongst their groups, but never on Hey Fonte, right? And so, like, with the same logic is, if I run into them, I want to have that round win, and I'd be building my list the same way to beat all Zorotoad players, but I don't think anyone else ever picks up the deck. However, with that said, I don't want to auto-lose to them, because I need these points, and I need to make day 2, and I want to win the tournament. So, the deck is strong. I do think Pikarom, at least Evan's version, slaughters it. I honestly thought he misplayed like 19 times from when I counted in top 8. I was raging at my screen when I was like watching it go down, and I don't think you even need like Ranger in that deck. You just need like more reps against a logical player, like a really good player with it, or like to have a VOD and like sit there for hours on end studying like each little micro decision that they make. And they're the only ones that can ever do well with the deck, because the deck requires so much thinking and in theory and like tech communication. So will other people play it? No, I don't. I think 1 or 2 other players probably will make day 2 with it at most. But you need to be able to beat them in particular if they decide to play it again, which I don't see why they wouldn't, in my opinion.
I personally think that there's a chance they might switch to Zoroark Control and keep the Toad, but just to a more control variant, because then it would be favored versus the lasers, at least in my testing. Zoroark Control kind of slaughters their Zorotoad list, I believe, because you just Faba 4 times. Or maybe they add in some basic energy. That's something I've been toying with. But I definitely think top players playing Toad is not out of the question. And I also really like what you said about their control decks really prey on improperly built lists and players that aren't prepared. Because I think that's a huge factor.
They get free wins all throughout the tournament just because people, one, they'll like misplay like crazy, or 2, like their lists just aren't prepared, and you go into it at like a 30-70 against them. Yeah, and that's just not where you want to be against the best players in the game.
Like if they're playing at 100% and you're playing at 90, you're still at a disadvantage.
Absolutely, and then like that's why I played Pod. I didn't feel like losing to them.
Yep.
And then I ran into 3 of them at Dallas, and I was like, "This is fun." And I still lost to Caleb in top 8 because I did your game 2 and 3. But like, it's the same logic. You need to go in trying to beat them, and if not, then you're just taking a loss throughout your rounds. I think it's well worth it to tech for them at any point, because you're going to see them if you want to win the tournament.
Cool. Any differing thoughts? Great. Okay, so we'll go to Nick on Pikarom. Evan Campbell got 2nd, and Aaron Tarbell placed in the top 8. Evan Campbell's list plays no Versus Seeker, and their only supporters are 3 Guzma, 3 Lily. Any thoughts on the archetype going into Hartford or Evan's list? Anything about Pikarom?
Well, Pikarom is, at least from Daytona, it was the most popular deck at Daytona. So I'm not surprised that Pikarom ended up taking a couple top 8 spots. I think, at least, I know Aaron pretty well. I know he's a really good player, so I'm not surprised to see him make top 8. I think it's a pretty well positioned deck. It's pretty well rounded. It takes some bad matchups to things like Hitmonchan Wob, but overall it like has pretty neutral matchups. And if you hit your elixirs and you play well, you have a pretty good shot at winning.
Yeah, it's a strong deck for sure. Otto, so going into Toronto, Pikarom was hyped up as the best deck. It
Yes.
was the most played deck, just like it was here in Daytona, except it was countered out the wazoo in Toronto. There were Buzzwole decks, Buzzgarb decks, Hitmonchan, Lucario
Lucario.
GX.
We even played Marshadow and Night March. Yeah.
Yeah, it was crazy. Do you think we're going to have an onslaught of Pika-Rum counters again, or is there too much else to worry about in the meta?
There actually might not be too much again in this case, because if you look at the results from Daytona, Zorgarb and Archie's both placed poorly in day 2. So people might see Pikarom's resurgence and then might worry about Pikarom more than out of the big 3 decks, that's the one I'm most worried about personally. So I might take a worse Archie's or a worse Zorgarb matchup to have a better Pikarom matchup, just because might be easier to predict that will be the most played by a larger margin.
Word. Yeah, makes sense for sure. Russell, I'm going to go to you next. I'm going to kind of include Jose and Rahul into the top 8 decks since they had the same record. They bubbled at 9th and 10th. So Jose played Rayquaza. Rahul played Vespiquen Flareon. And then we had 7th place with Celebi Venusaur. Would you like to talk about any of those 3 decks? Just pick one.
Celebi Venusaur is super good. The Vespiquen stuff is because people are lazy and they don't play Oricorio. And Jose's deck is because Jose's really good, but he's only good with rush down stupid brainless like head to table decks. But he's a super good player. But in general, I would prepare for Queen. I don't take an auto loss to that, and I think Oricorio helps good players outplay idiots. And I think that Rayquaza is actually a super good deck. But me personally, if I play Pikarom, I would always play Tapu Koko GX. And if I played Archie's, I would play Palkia, so I'd auto-win them. I wouldn't care.
Okay. Nick, anything to say about Rayquaza's placement in the meta?
Rayquaza seems like the type of deck, like Russell said, it's like a rush down, beat down deck. Like you pop off, and then your opponent doesn't have a way to deal with your quick aggression. And that's how it beats like the control decks. Like control decks usually can't keep up and like control the game state when your opponent has like 8 energy in play or something like that. And in theory, and like it can do decent against Pikarom for the same reason. Like just get more energies out in play and you one-shot Pikaroms. But I think it's really reliant on hitting your max elixirs and having a good setup. Like if you're not like one-shotting a GX or tag team on turn 2 or 3 at the very least, like you're just gonna lose.
Yeah, it likes to finish games in a few turns for sure. Otto, do you have... Actually, let me finish up top 8. So the other decks in top 8 were Guillermo Estupinan, sorry if I mispronounced your name, with Zoroark Control, Zoroark Oranguru. We had John Croxton with Shocklock, and Ryan Pina with Sableye Garbodor. All 3 are control decks. Do you want to talk about any of those, Zoroark Control, Shocklock, or Sablegarb, and how you think they're placed going into Hartford?
Yeah, I can talk about Shocklock and Zoroark Control.
Okay.
I've been testing a lot of Shocklock recently online. I've never played the decks. I wanted to see, what the hubbub was about. Because Croxton got top 8 with the 2 regionals in a row. So that seems pretty. He's the only Shocklock player. Was the only Shocklock player in Daytona, and he got top 8, 2 regionals in a row, being the only person playing it.
I think Zach Cooper might have also topped at Greensboro.
Oh yeah, right. So that seemed pretty good when I looked at it on paper.
Mm-hmm.
But the deck takes some really, really bad matchups, and you just gotta dodge Garbodor, and that just seems like something I just can't get myself to do. Because they've taken the Goodra line completely out of Shocklock to make it more consistent, which means that if any deck sets up Garbodor against you just lose at that point. So I don't know if that's if that's the auto loss that you would be willing to take. But if you have to take one, I mean, Zorogarb is seeing a decline in play, and like Drampagarb only had like there was only 10 people that played it.
Yeah,
in Daytona.
Drampagarb's never heavy. Drampagarb's never heavy. Nick, would you mind talking about either Sableye, Garbodor, or Zoroark control?
I guess I can talk a little bit about both, more in more of a general sense.
Mhm.
All I know is that like playing in Daytona, in day two, like just talking to people, everyone that wasn't playing control is like, I'm praying that I don't hit the Zoro control, I don't hit the Shock Lock, and I don't hit the Sableye, just because like people weren't playing answers to those decks. But those are the type of decks that if you do play an answer to them, you can just blow them up, and then those decks aren't good anymore. They thrive off of their opponents not playing answers to them and not being prepared to play against that type of deck.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, very well put. Okay, so we've covered all the top 8 a fair amount. 2 pretty good decks actually 3 pretty good decks that were not in top 8. Hitmonchan, Archie's, and Zoroark Garbodor. They were all present but not in the top 8. Russ, any thoughts on Hitmonchan going into Hartford, and how was it a good play for Daytona?
I love it. I thought Hitmonchan was a really good call. I don't honestly know how its Zoro control matchup goes. I'm pretty sure they need to play a Guru, but even if they did, I don't see them having a win condition to Oko, so they just get looped out of the game and create stalemate. Yeah, so it just sounds awful for that, and in that sense. I guess if you're accepting like a DDG auto loss, which like we talked about earlier, you necessarily don't want to do.
Yeah.
But if you want to go Hitmonchan, I think that'd be a great call for points. Like that's my safe call for points. If you're gonna get points, you just go Hitmonchan. Nothing like Wobbuffet to make your opponent not play the game. It feels really, really good and expanded. And overall, I think it's good. I play it for points if I was in that mood.
I really enjoy Hitmonchan. I've been just playing a very low tech list, and I popped a Ranger in to see how it helps against Zorotoad. It feels pretty good. Not on paper, it looks like it doesn't help. I will say that, but in application and testing, it feels pretty good. That deck can get poor setups, like if they don't hit the Floatstone, Fighting Fury Belt, DCE Toad for turn 1. You can actually start to run away with the game, knocking out their Zoruas. But yeah, it's not the matchup you want to see. How about Zoroark Garbodor, Otto? I know you've tested Zorogarb in the past. Was it not well positioned, or for Daytona, or did not enough good players play it? And what is it looking like going into Hartford?
So, my logic with Zoroark Garbodor has just been that it's always been, a regional behind in terms of meta development. So, in Daytona, it couldn't handle the Zorotoad. In Greensboro, it couldn't handle the Pikarom coming back, and then also Drampagarb. In Toronto, couldn't handle the Night March. The deck is always it's teching after the fact for the previous meta, and it just never seems to kind of help it solidify its place in the current meta. So I've been thinking about it a lot, but I don't know if it can handle some of the things that we're going to see coming into Hartford. So I've been testing it, but I'm not too sure that I'm going to play it.
Okay, yeah, it feels like there's not enough room for all the stuff it needs in the deck to handle everything. Nick, we're going to go rogue for a second with you. Egg Splat. So you did really well with it. You got top 16, right?
Yeah.
Cool, congratulations on that. Definitely a rogue deck. Not something that we were talking about a lot. I don't think people are still talking about it. Why did you do well, and would you do well again if you went to Hartford with it?
Well, Russ brought up a pretty good point at the beginning, saying that rogue decks have a chance to thrive and win at small regionals because you're more likely to play against all meta decks.
Yeah.
And day one, that's what I did. I played against 4 Picaroms. I played against 2 Hitmonchan Wobs and Archies, and I played against all meta decks, and I beat all of them. I went 8-1. My only loss was round 1 to some dead draws. But,
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, you clapped day one, dude. I was so happy.
Yeah.
Because Frank told me about X-Plat, and I was like, boy, let's go.
What about Frank and Hunter? Because they both barely missed day 2, right?
Yeah,
Did
both,
they?
Frank and Hunter, they both played. We all played the same 60. We all worked on the deck together, and they both lost their win-and-ins, which is really sad to see. But
Did they hit bad matchups, or did the deck just draw poorly for them in those games?
I think they both just kind of Well, I know Hunter, he played on stream last round, and he lost to Zorotoad, and the Zorotoad is a pretty rough matchup. It's a very interesting matchup because, X-Splat's one of the few decks that actually have ways to one-shot a 220 HP Seismitoad. But, I think he just dead drew, 2 out of the 3 games. And then, I can't remember what Frank played against last round, but I think he just didn't draw very well.
Got it.
Word.
Yeah, the matchups seem really good for that deck.
Yeah. Yeah, no, against Picarom, the matchups, Picarom matchup's fine, Archie's is fine. When you play through your Vitalizer, Hitmonchan Wob is fine. But yeah.
Cool. Would you play it going into Hartford?
I definitely consider it. The deck takes a pretty hard loss to control decks, hard control decks, which is scary.
Okay.
But,
yeah, it seems like it would.
But if you think you're just gonna hit Picaroms all day,
go for
and
it.
you want to spend $20 on Dittos each.
I only have to spend 60. I have 1. Let's go. I only need to buy 3.
There you go.
Russ, last deck we're going to spotlight is Archie's. You've had some success with Archie's recently. I know you really enjoyed your list. You like Palkia. You like shuffling those energies. Was Archie's not well prepared for Daytona, or did not enough people play it well? What's it looking like for Hartford? I'm hearing a lot of Archie's is on the decline. We can take a loss to it now. Does that mean it's time for it to bounce back?
Absolutely. It'd be my top 3 plays for sure. I wouldn't play the deck without Onyx and Palkia and Snorlax GX.
Mm-hmm.
I think Andy was the only Archie's in day 2. There might have been one other one.
I think there were 4.
I think there are 3.
All right, I remember they all bombed.
Yeah.
Well, top 16. I know Connor Fenton also played it for sure.
Yeah, there were 5.
There were 4.
It looks like.
5.
Wait, was Andy Gray not in top in day 2 in Daytona?
He was
Yeah, he
33rd
was.
or something.
Okay.
Yeah, there were
he was
5.
down there.
Okay,
but-
1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. Yeah, Andy, Matthew, Paget, Penny, and David. Did
And
Connor?
then Connor Fitton.
Oh, yeah, 23rd. Okay, yeah, so they were all 32 or top 64.
I really don't like DDG's list, and I think people that defaulted to copying that definitely didn't see success
Okay.
at Daytona. I think their list was order pad ridiculous. It was crazy. I played 2 on my own, and I was super pissed. I kept flipping tails, but
You just need to be a better player.
it's just a run hot deck. It's really it's a deck that runs hot like it needs to, similar to Rayquaza. And then if you don't, just scoop and go to the next game, and then you have to play 1 or 2 techs as opposed to the other Archies, the Onyx, the Palkia, and the Snorlax GX. And they played Kingdra, completely unnecessary unless Hitmonchan's in the format. If Hitmonchan's seeing a rides back, then Kingdra's okay. The Palkia is really good against other Archies, but now that that's gone, it's it's getting less value out of getting played out of it.
Isn't the Kingdra the out to Celisor, though?
Yeah, that's one way out, but I beat it by Palkiaing. They were elixir, and I was like, oh, Palkia, nerd, threw it all back. I was like, go ahead. And so,
Celisor is
yeah.
also 3% of the meta share. So
I don't know. There's 10 people. So I guess.
I wouldn't not play Palkia is what I'm saying. You play the Snorlax GX so you can close the game out against Picarom once Onyx takes the 3 prizes first, and then you play the Palkia in case you fall 2 turns behind in prize exchange to sweep all their energy back in the deck. If they're a bad player and they just copy Evan's list and they're like, oh, I'm gonna go max elixir, I'm gonna go go ham, all this stuff. You just Palkia all the energy back, and then you kind of look at them, and then they already used 3 elixirs, so they're gonna attach a Picarom, then you're gonna Guzma and KO with the Onyx, and the game ends. So it's a good punish tool, and I think people really, really underrate it, what it does. So I think Archie's a really good call. You beat the Zoro control if you establish. if you get your Snorlax out, you can use that to take a knockout onto Toad with the Fighting Fury belt, and then you can use your Wailord to take a KO against the 180 Toad in case they don't hit their second belt. There's a lot of things that can go wrong for them, as well as good for you. You just have to get turn 1 Archies. You have to run hot. I still like the deck. I still like Pod. I don't know if I can bring up a deck. I don't know if you're going to mention this. Greninja Break might see play and might come back, just so everyone's aware.
Mm-hmm.
Detective
Pikachu. Yeah.
Yeah, the one that like coin flips. Like you can make a break off of it, and then you just start swinging matchups because your opponent doesn't get to play the game.
Mm-hmm.
Get to swing at you.
That
And then you have
doesn't
like
sound fun.
No, not at all. So like, not only is it throwing it's throwing these water shurikens at you, and you try to hit it, and it's like, nope, my turn. You draw and you just beat them. So
Yeah, I'm not
watch
gonna
out
be
for that.
I'm not gonna be taking chances with Greninja hands though. That's for sure.
I would 1000% would, dude.
Yeah.
So fun. Yeah.
Okay.
He's already got my invite. I'm not trying to try.
Yeah.
Let's take a
You just want to style with Detective Pikachu cards.
Oh, I've been playing Flag.
All right. First of all, thank you guys for being on. We're gonna wrap it up here. Let's do the last question. I'm gonna make it 2 actually, for sake of time. Otto, tell me your top 3 decks that you would play going into this tournament. Obviously, you have a secret deck. Don't share it with the internet. Feel free not to. So your top 3 decks, and will Night March make a comeback?
My top 3 decks that I'm thinking about are Zoroark, Garbodor. This is in no specific order.
Okay, yeah.
Zoroark, Garbodor, Pikarom, and maybe Shocklock. And then will Night March make a comeback? No, I think Oricorios were still, even though I think only one person played, or 2 people played Night March, and Oricorios are still in Daytona lists. So that's just like an easy, and Oricorio like has its uses.
Yeah, it helps
matches
math
too.
somewhere.
So
yeah.
So it's like fine. It's like one of those techs that's useful, so you might as well play it anyways.
Cool. And any shout outs?
Shout out to Full Grip Games.
Cool. FullGripGames.com, right?
Yep.
Tricky Gym sponsor.
Yep.
Nick, top 3 decks going into Hartford if you were going, and will Archie's decline or increase in play?
Top 3 decks. I'd probably have to go with my boy Eggsplat. Just because I really like the deck. I think Archie's would probably be another one of my top contenders, and then probably just Pikarom because it's pretty hard to actually counter. And then will Archie's decline or see more play? I feel like some people will be turned away from playing Archie's since it didn't do well in Daytona, but I do agree with Russ that I think Archie's could be a really good play for this weekend.
Awesome. Any shout outs?
Shout out to the Wonder Tag podcast, my low-key sponsor. Also, and shout out to Egg Gang.
Egg Gang. All right. Thanks for being on, Nick.
No problem.
Russell, top 3 decks if you were going. Will Greninja Break make top 32? And shout outs, of course.
I think one will. Hopefully, no one's gonna play Giratina, so why not?
Right.
My top 3 decks in order would be Archie's, and you have to play Acerola, and you have to play Palkia, and you have to play Onyx and Snorlax GX. Everything else you want to take out, who really cares?
Make sure you have the Russell checklist.
Yeah, I wouldn't play 4 order pad because that's just not me. If you find consistency for it, then remove one of the techs that I just named. I don't play Fisherman because I'm not trash. I know how to conserve my energy, so I will talk trash on that. 2. Pikarom. I would play Pikarom with a Coco GX. I would add a second Marshadow, and I'd remove that Lugia. I think it does nothing.
Okay.
I wouldn't play the Nest Ball. I would probably play something else in its place. Don't try to fit in Ranger against it. Learn how to play against a matchup instead of playing it down.
Great advice.
You don't even have VS Seeker to pull it back in Evan's list, and I do think Evan's list is really, really, really solid. That's why he did so well with it.
Mm-hmm.
Don't play Skyfield down on your first turn. Just to go +1 on a card with your Shaman, because Zoroark can use that later on against you. They can also bench a Lele, bench multiple Pokemon, and then clear off the Skyfield with their Verbeek City, and then get rid of their Lele that way, and now you lose a GX attack for a game off of it 170 on the bench, so don't be trash. third would probably be a tie between XBlat and Pod for me. I couldn't get Pod to beat Pikarom consistently, especially when people are patient and they go for a turn 2 Marshadow instead of a turn 1 because they're not bad. Which forces you to like Ultra Ball into a Lele first, allowing them to get like a 4 prize VX turn. And then Marshading you into potential trash. You need to like rip a Zoroark or a Shaman off of that. So I think get the Sudowoodo down and like puts you in a really tough spot. So Pod's still good. You beat the Zorotoad, which will only be probably like 10% of the field, if that at most. Actually, 10% is pretty high, maybe like 5, 6. And then XBot, because like that's just like the aggressive fun deck that I would go with if I'm in a good mood. I also think that there's going to be tons of Pikarom because people don't feel like spending money when they come over from Standard to Expanded, and they're just like, I'll just play some Elixirs that I've had for some while now. And then
Absolutely.
So, those are my 4.
Great. And shout-outs.
Shout out to someone's PC. I love everybody, even though we're not attending the next like, 2 regionals, pretty much any of us. Shout out to our sponsors, Flipside Gaming and Ultimate Guard. And shout out to you, man, for always being consistent with the podcast updates and everything, because as a content creator myself, I know how hard it is to find time to do all this crap. So.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Check out flipsidegaming.com. Like Russell said, you can either use code Celio for 10% off or code SavePC.
SavePC? SavePC.
SavePC. Check out my twitch.tv/Celios_network. I'll be streaming a lot more next week after Hartford's over because I'm done with college. And yeah, good. Thank you. Good luck at Hartford, and I'll see you next time here on Celios Network.